Okay, so in this session we're going to look at some good reason to believe in those four facts. In fact, we're just looking at the first fact, that Jesus was crucified. Now, for you to have confidence in this, just remember, we're not talking about a miracle. Okay, so was Jesus crucified? Well, virtually all scholars would say today that Jesus was crucified. So I'm going to quote to you firstly a man called James Dunn. Now this guy, he's an eminent scholar, he's a New Testament scholar and a historical scholar. And now he is a Christian, so you might say, well, he's biased. Well, we've already thought about being biased. That's not an issue. But this is what he says. He says, two facts in the life of Jesus command almost universal assent. So that's not a biased statement. He's just saying that there are two facts in the life of Jesus that almost every scholar believes, and ranks so high on the almost impossible to doubt or deny scale of historical facts that they are often the starting points for the study of the historical Jesus. In other words, scholars are persuaded, virtually all scholars are persuaded that Jesus was crucified. So much so that that is the basis from which they start to study and try and find out about who was the real Jesus. Well, we know he was crucified. The evidence is there. That's kind of how it works. That's what James Dunn says. By the way, the references to these scholars will appear in the notes below. The second scholar that I want to quote is not a Christian, a man called Bart Ehrman. Bart Ehrman, he would say that Jesus did not come back from the grave, but he acknowledges the resurrection. Bart Ehrman states that the crucifixion of Jesus on the orders of Pontius Pilate is the most certain element about him. That's a quote. So Bart Ehrman, he denies the resurrection, but he acknowledges quite happily, Jesus was really resurrected, was really crucified. John Dominic Crossman states that the crucifixion of Jesus is as certain in as any historical fact can be. It's another scholar. He says that he was crucified is as sure as any historical fact can be, since both Josephus and Tacitus agree with the Christian accounts on at least that basic fact, the resurrection. Another couple of scholars who wrote a book called The Jesus Legend, Eddy and Boyd, they state that it is now firmly established that there is non-Christian confirmation of the crucifixion. So the scholars are saying that there is non-Christian confirmation of the crucifixion of Jesus. In other words, there's evidence around the time of Jesus given to us by unbelievers that Jesus was really crucified. One of which was a man called Tacitus, a Roman historian. And he wrote around about 116 AD. He was no friend of Christianity, and he was writing, but even he recognised that Christians were being unduly persecuted. This is what he wrote. Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Now let me just explain that. Nero, who started the fire of Rome, he blamed Christians for it. And Tacitus tells us here that Christians were hated for their abominations. You see, the reason why Christians were hated for their abominations was because people believed that they were cannibals because they talked about eating the blood, drinking the blood and eating the body of Jesus. And that was misunderstood by many people. And so they were accused of abominations. But he goes on to say this: Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate. So this unbelieving historian is quite happy to acknowledge that Jesus was crucified under Pontius Pilate. So I didn't know that James Dunn, that first scholar that I quoted, says that there is almost universal assent to that Jesus was crucified is a fact. But he says almost. There is a group of scholars that denies that Jesus was crucified. But that they are Muslim scholars. They represent the only opposition to other scholars that Jesus was crucified. But they deny that for good reason. A Muslim cannot acknowledge that Jesus was crucified because they hold that Jesus was a prophet of God, and according to the Quran, no prophet of God could be crucified. God would never allow that. Let me read to you. This is from the Quran. Muslims maintain that Jesus was not crucified and that he was not killed by any other means. They hold this belief based on various interpretations of the Quran, chapter 4, verses 157 to 158, which states, "They killed him not, nor crucified him, but so it was made to appear to them, or it so appeared unto them. Nay, Allah raised him up unto himself." In other words, the Quran says that. The Quran says that Jesus wasn't crucified, but that Allah took him to himself. Which is why they say the tomb was empty. But they are biased. So when you exclude them, all scholars, I would challenge anyone to find a scholar that seriously claims Jesus wasn't crucified.